Why did I clap?
I don't know.
Anyway, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the clapping CRM players apparently today. Maybe we're clapping because the weather's so nice out there. I don't know.
Maybe we're clapping because we're back after a couple of weeks of hiatus.
That's right. It's this is the first time in 3 weeks, huh?
Yeah. Well, your fault. I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks, I guess. I was at Sage in Vegas, our favorite place, and then right back to San Francisco for. I said, I said when I was talking to Ryan Shellac, Trailhead DX, and it's actually now I think it's called Trailblazer DX.
I don't know. I can't keep up with Salesforce. Look, I still remember when Salesforce refused to capitalize the S in Salesforce, right? I still remember that. So
that's
I can't
kind of
keep
funny.
up with them and their naming conventions.
Oh, look at that. I got a notification that says CRM Playaz is on now.
Oh, well, maybe we should hang up and watch.
Yeah.
Oh, no, let's do a watch party.
Well, maybe we'll do one next week.
No, let's do one now.
That would be hard
for
to do.
us.
That'd be weird to do. But you know what? We have been bringing the as. I want to make sure I emphasize the Z in that. Since 2009. 15 years and counting.
I know. And, of course, as we've mentioned before, that will lead us to, at some point in early November, we trust, more details coming, IRL 2024, the celebration of 15 years of CRM Playaz and the evolution of Playaz Productions Network.
CRM Evolution.
Yeah. That's right. CRM Playaz Evolution.
Well, you know what? It doesn't have a ring to it right now. Is our moment is Finn. What's going on here?
Well, we've gone 3 weeks. You probably think we abandoned him.
We're back, Finn.
We need you, man.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do the show without that moment where we guess whatever language you throw at us. Maybe next week. But we are back, and we have a great show today. We will tell you about our guests a little later. But it was a pretty good, I don't know what we call that thing, but it's a happy hour.
Yeah. The most incredibly, the infinitely expanding effort, extraordinary hour.
Eric was, by the way, Eric Charles was on the that thing yesterday. I love the auto subtitles show CRM to be serum.
Serum.
The serum. Yikes.
Wow.
I don't think I like that. That doesn't sound that great to me. Maybe we need to pronounce
CRM
more.
This is no, it was just a show on medical pharmaceutical things.
We found the serum. Yeah, I don't know. Sounds different. But anyway, yeah, Eric was in there. We had a good conversation. Part of the conversation was about something that happened on another PPN show earlier this week. That would be Whispered Insights.
Yeah.
Although nobody ever whispers on
that show.
There's nothing, especially when you have Esteban joined by the one and only Liz Miller. I almost said Liz Lemon. I have such a hard time making sure I don't say Liz Lemon. I just want to say Liz Lemon for whatever reason.
Well, Tina Fey, she is who she is. And both of them, let's say, have each of them has an extraordinary personality or nothing alike at all.
That's a really interesting way of putting it, because you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Although Liz is just as fun, Liz Miller is just as funny as Liz Lemon is, if you ask me. I'm just saying.
Well, I think she's smarter than Liz Lemon is. I'm not sure she's as funny as Liz Lemon is. Given
you should have listened to Whispered Insights. I'm gonna stop doing that, by the way. It takes a little too much effort. I'd rather just say Whispered Insights. But anyway, so here's the thing that kind of kicked off the conversation yesterday during the whatever you name that thing, happy hour. Check this out.
IEEH.
Yeah, that. Check this out.
Boss Don Ebert, and it was always really funny because Don would always say, "So what? If you couldn't pass the so what test, you weren't getting anywhere. Like you could go in and be like, well, everyone's investing in this and everyone's doing this and everyone's doing these commercials and everyone's posting, everyone's putting ads in this and everyone's doing." He's like, "So what?" And if you got stumped by so what, turn around, just walk out the door, go, right? You had to really be like, "No, here's the so what, and here's what it's going to do." And I think that we've lost the ability, not so much to answer so what, we've lost the ability to ask it. I don't see many leaders asking that anymore because it feels mean. I think it was just some of the best training I ever had. And this guy wasn't a Six Sigma PhD fancy, like he was a former soccer player. And he's like, "No, honestly, so what? Why should I care about this?" But if you can't ask it, you're not necessarily the leader you think you are.
Are you afraid to ask? So what? You know who isn't? Miles Davis.
Whoa.
Come on. I mean,
well, I don't know what you want me to say, but I know where you're going.
As soon as I heard her say that, all of a sudden I started hearing the background.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the only possible thing you could do is the music in the background, and if you definitely don't want to hear me sing anything.
But the first half of the happy hour was spent discussing can you actually be a leader if you are afraid to ask the question, so what?
Well, the answer is kind of obvious on that, really, because if you're afraid to do anything in particular that gets something that you need done, or get somebody to accomplish something, then of course you can't be a leader. I mean, if you're afraid of that. But that said, the so what thing is fantastic, and there's ways of doing it. I mean, there's always ways of doing it. Look, my mantra to all my mentees has always been one thing: you can say anything you want to say, but be prepared to defend everything you do say, right? And if you're not,
you know how you put them on that defensive footing, just say after they've laid out all the stuff, so what?
But it's true. I mean, it's true. You have to be able to prove your point and prove it to somebody who's going to not necessarily agree with it immediately. And if the leader can't evoke that, I mean, then it's not a leader. And if you can't answer it, then as Liz said, turn around and walk right out the door, because you shouldn't even be bringing it damn up.
That's another song, right? One of these days you'll
turn around. Yeah. See what I mean? You don't want me singing.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean now.
Yes.
But anyway, no, it was interesting. We spent at least 30 minutes on that yesterday. And the other 30 minutes?
What did anybody say about it, though? I mean, what did they say? Did anybody say, yeah, you can be a leader without it?
Well, what happens in happy hour stays in happy hour. I don't know if we're able to divulge all the the thoughts. But I will say this. So we had a brand new first timer on the happy hour. Her name is Monica. I wish I could remember her last name. But she works at Columbia University, and we were like, oh, well, first of all, welcome. And who do you know that brought you into this thing? She's like, no, I just happened on this link on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And she just joined.
Well, what she did was she read, you can't actually get that link directly on LinkedIn because it's not there, but she registered. And I have this new policy of contacting everybody as they register rather than waiting a week and then contacting everybody at the last 5 seconds before it's going to start because I forgot. So I contacted her, sent her the link. She wasn't able to hit the first one. And then she said she would show up in a week or two. And there she is. And I'm excited. New people are great.
So here's the great part of that. I was filling in for you So I had to play host and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if everybody introduced themselves to Monica, tell them who they are, what they do, and all that stuff. But I also asked them to share a fun fact about themselves that maybe none of the group had heard of before. So guess, and the most of the people that were there are the usual suspects, right?
Okay.
All right. So out of the usual suspects, who do you think was a professional belly dancer for 12 years?
Well, there's
Please don't say Pete Smith. I'll say it wasn't Pete Smith.
a for 12 years.
I think it was 12 years. I think so.
Well, you just said it's going to be a she, and you just
I tried to
confirmed
hide
that.
it.
Well, I don't know too many male belly dancers actually.
Thank the Lord, actually.
Well, if it's it's only two usual regular who are there all the time.
I gave that away. Shoot.
Yeah, you kind of did.
Yeah.
I won't say who it is just because it's not fair if she doesn't want to know, but I'll say the initials I'm guessing would be KT.
And we're not talking Katie Lang, although
Right.
I think that's KD, but anyway.
I could see her having a real she's got a wild side, definitely. She really does. She's awesome.
So we talked about the so what? Then we talked about how everybody's enjoying the event season. And there was some that was a really interesting conversation, maybe a little too much to go into right now, but needless to say, good happy hour. We stuck it out there with you being absent, and we made it okay. Even Steve Gilmore, the venerable Steve Gilmore, chimed in. Basically,
it's usually better without me. So
nah, that's not true.
Yeah, it is. I'm terrible with those things.
Nah, not true. But anyway, so that was the happy hour. We will be doing that next Wednesday too, I think.
Yeah. Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're interested, go onto LinkedIn, go to my profile, watch for the announcement, or go look at a past announcement. It's the same registration link for 2024, though, only. Link there. If you're new, register, and then I will send you a recurring link that'll be good through December 18th of this year. You don't have to register ever again. You just have to register once to get that recurring link, and it's always good till December 18th. So again, LinkedIn profile. On my LinkedIn profile, either look for a past announcement. The announcements come out Monday or Tuesday, or an announcement of the infinitely expanding extraordinary hour, and register. It'll be an Eventbrite registration. I'll see it. I'll send you the email. You come in. It's a Zoom call at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday, minus occasional Wednesdays where we can't do it.
All righty. So before we move on, we got some house cleaning. There's a lot of stuff going on the network.
You mean housekeeping, right?
I always do that. I don't know why.
House cleaning. You're all
why
fired.
do I never get that right? It's between the Liz Lemon thing and the house cleaning thing. I don't know what it is.
Are you firing me?
No.
Oh.
Why would I?
Well, you said house cleaning. The only thing you could do, literally, if you're saying the word, you could fire me. If I'm saying the word, I could fire you. But other than that, there's literally nothing else to do.
All right. Well, there is something else to do, because tomorrow, look at that. Up from the Rabbit Hole is back.
Yeah, but you know what? There's one thing that's not different, but different. What's not different is Monique is back with us. What is different is she's back as a co-host of the show. So welcome, Monique Johnson. Tomorrow, what time is it going to be?
2 p.m. 2 p.m. Friday, Eastern, that is. And I don't know. That's not like I'm really yelling at you. I don't know. That's just a bad picture. I don't know. It's all right. It always looks like I'm being mean to you with that picture, but I'm really not. and
I'm
you kind of
going.
look like you're a little back on your heels a little
I'm
bit. Like,
going.
why is he yelling
What?
at me?
It's like
Yeah,
what?
I know. Yeah,
What?
that's just not right. But anyway,
And Monique's laughing and saying, "Isn't that funny?"
no, that's because she's got the whole other half to herself.
I know.
We're all bunched together. Anyway, no, it's going to be fun because we're going to be talking a little bit tomorrow about it. We just mentioned this conference season. There's, it seems to be more conferences than ever. We are fully back from the pandemic stuff. Conferences to the left of me, conferences to the right, and there's a lot of opportunities. Everybody's trying to do content, everybody's trying to do things in the midst of those events, and so we thought we'd take some time to share some of the things that we use, some of the devices, some of the services, but also some of the tips. It's not always about the technology in order to get some really good stuff when you're on the go at a conference. Sometimes there's some little things to think about that are easily overlooked until you actually start doing this stuff.
The title of the episode is "The Bearable Lightness of Being."
What?
There used to be a movie called "The Unbearable Lightness of Being," a very famous movie, and this is the bearable lightness of being.
Okay, well, what he said. Just join us tomorrow at 2:00. If you want to find out, a matter of fact, I'll give you a little sneak peek. This is probably the device that has really stepped in to my bag, and I can't go anywhere without it anymore. It is the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Little camera. It's so small, but it puts out some great images. It's got a gimbal. It's got a little monitor so you can see everything. I'll go into it a little bit more tomorrow, but this is the thing that I bought over the last couple of months that has really changed the game when it comes to me going on the road and doing all sorts of stuff. So
I have
learn more about that.
I have a surprise I'll be talking about.
Ooh. So that means you got to come back tomorrow 2 p.m. to hear what the surprise is. All right, but here's a surprise. I never thought I'd be doing whispered insight, but I was invited to be a part of how can you turn down being on with Esteban and the venerable Steve Gilmore? You just can't. So, and why? And Steve is like ominously looking over my shoulder, and once again, I'm apparently yelling at
scary picture
Esteban
of
now.
him. That picture of Steve is very frightening. Actually,
It's kind of ominous.
it's kind of
but-
Luciferian.
Yeah, but when Esteban invites you to be on with the venerable Steve Gilmore, you say yes. I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about, but I know it's going to be fun because I'm going to see how little I can talk. Good
luck on that one.
Yeah, because Steve is always
you see how talkative he is. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I can't wait. It's going to be fun. Esteban is Esteban. Steve Gilmore is Steve Gilmore. And I'll just be there kind of, in the middle of them, I guess, looking over my shoulder and yelling at Esteban, apparently. So one last thing. Ooh, I can't wait for this one.
Yeah.
We did one of we called it the Great Debate last year, and it went over so well. And I think we had Esteban was on there,
and Cheryl.
John was on there. No,
Lori was.
Lori McCabe was on there, and Brian Summer was on there. Remember?
And Dave Smith.
Was Dave Smith on that one?
Yeah.
We had that many people. Wow. Okay.
I think we had 5.
It was a great show, and so we were like, "Hey, we should do that again." And so the idea is we're gonna throw out 3 topics. We're gonna time them at 10 minutes each. And we're just gonna let the conversation goes where it goes for each of those 10 minutes on that topic. And who better to be a part of this than the Brohammer? You see him in the bottom left there with that Clint Eastwood glint. You have Esteban Kolsky, who unfortunately his head is kind of covered up by our logo, but you guys know who he is. And we have Bob Stutz. Hopefully, that's why I have the question mark there. we're hoping to have Bob.
Waiting to hear from him.
Waiting to hear from him. So that's why it's like Bob Stutz. Hopefully, we'll put an exclamation point there soon. And last but certainly not least, Cheryl Kingstone, who we don't have on as much as we should, but she is great. She's got great opinions, and she's not afraid to say so what either.
This is 4 people who, let's just say, are willing to speak their mind. That's the best way to put it. And you'll just have to watch it and see.
That's kind of like an understatement, but yeah. All right. All right. So that's a lot going on next week. But before we get to next week, you know what we have to get to before we get to next week, right?
Yeah.
And now it's time for Stump the Godfather with the venerable Paul Greenberg. Brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot.
Just wanted to play it out because I hadn't heard Benny in like 3 weeks. So I just feel good now hearing Benny, you know, and getting ready to do Stump the Godfather. By the way, there is a thought after that conversation with Esteban and Liz that if you get stumped by so what, then you shouldn't be able to, you know. So I said, wow, we can have a new show called Stump the So What, but it doesn't have the same ring as Stump the Godfather.
We can have a show just called So What. It doesn't have to be called
we might get
What.
We might get sued by them.
Possibly sue us for the words.
Well, we might get sued by the Miles Davis estate.
I don't think so. I don't think anyone has ownership of the phrase. It's kind of like an ordinary English phrase. It's like somebody saying, the restroom's down the hall. I'm sorry, I'm suing you for use of the term. Right.
Well, we won't even tempt fate on that one because we already have Stump the Godfather, brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. Wow, that wasn't a very nice noise to make.
Well, you know what I think.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, now on to this week's Stump the Godfather question. If I can only get my mouse to actually, I really hate having all these Mac devices. And for some reason, I'm on my laptop and I'm using the trackpad and it's moving my studio display, which is hooked up to my Mac Mini. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that.
I think that's a setting in on the Mac.
It's a setting that is the default that I did not want defaulted to. But anyway, I digress. Moving on to Stump the Godfather question of the week. So I was digging into some transcripts from a technology conference that all these big companies apparently did a presentation with. I think it was a Morgan Stanley tech conference or something like that. So I was looking at, I think NVIDIA presented. I think Salesforce might have presented. I think Oracle might have presented. And I see Microsoft presented. And so I was reading through these things and I said, oh, this is an interesting one. Office 365 recently reached a milestone going over this number of licenses. Now, most people get jacked up on all the social media, platforms. Oh, this one's got 100 million active daily users, or this one's got 500 million active monthly users. So when I saw Office 365, that the old school kind of the productivity thing, and this number that they put out there as part of this technology conference, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This will make for an interesting Stump the Godfather question. So Office 365 recently reached what number of licenses? Anybody who wants to take a shot?
License, because there's multiple kinds of licenses.
It's all Office 365. We're not gonna
multiple kinds of there's individual licenses, there's family licenses, there's
total number of licenses. Not gonna try to get into the details. Total number of licenses. And our guests in the studio, in our green room, the virtual green room. First of all, feel free to have any refreshments that are left over. I'm not sure there are any at this
They're
point,
cronuts. There's
but yeah,
stale cronuts in there somewhere.
there may be some crumb nuts at this point, but I don't know if there's crumb nuts. But if you want to take a stab at it, put a guess out in the private chat, and we'll let folks know. Anybody who wants to take a guess, Eric, if you're still there, please feel free to take a shot. I don't know if Patrick and Rebecca are out there or anybody else.
Yeah, they don't
But
tell us.
take a shot. Do you have a good guess, a good estimate as to what milestone number for Office 365 licenses?
Well, I've got
And
my completely wild guess, so I'm good.
You're completely wild guess. Okay. Okay. Julia Glidden. Let me put this up here.
Hi, Julia. She's awesome.
Oh, you know Julia?
Yeah, and she was also a corporate vice president at Microsoft at one point.
So you
Right.
would think she would have a really good
Well,
chance. this
maybe
week.
she ran public sector for Microsoft.
Okay, so Julia is in at $1
Rock
billion.
star.
Eric Charles is in at 250 million. Let me see. I think we have oh God. I'm looking at our private chat with our guest, and I'm just going to read what he said. He said his guess is for Pi Day. I'll go with 314.
Yep. 3.
There's only 314 people using this thing? Really?
He means 314 million.
Well, I have to, you add the addendum because I don't want to, take I don't want to think, he's saying one thing and I'm saying something else. But anyway, so right now, $1 billion, 250 million, 314. What about the 314? What was it? 14159? Do you want to add that part in there too?
3.14159. Somebody, I'll tell you what, Hyoun, why don't we you do when you get on, you'll just go.
He says 314 million.
Yeah,
314 million. All right, there we go. All right, we're good. So we've got 250 million from Eric, $1 billion from Julia, 314 from our guest, and now the venerable Paul Greenberg. Your response to this question?
625 million.
625 million. All right, this is nice. There's nice room, nice spread in between each guest. We got, I think the lowest is 250 million. Then we have 314 million. Then we have 675 million or 625 million. And Julia is the $1 billion. $1 billion. All right. So the answer to the question, Office 365 recently reached a milestone going over blank million licenses. The answer is 400 million.
My original guess was 450, but I upped it. Damn it.
You would have been you would have been the closest.
Yeah.
But guess who's the closest?
Eric. No.
Oh, our guest.
Yeah. He came
in at 314 million. He was 86 million off. He's got it. Now, unless he read the same transcript I did and wanted to make it look like he, didn't know, but knew he was going to put an answer that would win, that could have been the case. Or maybe it was just lucky that it was Pi Day. Maybe, I don't know. But he is the winner of this week's Stump the Godfather, brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. That wasn't a bad one, right? I wanted one that didn't have AI in it, okay? I just wanted something.
I'm in. Believe me, I'd rather hear about Office 365 than AI at this point.
Do you use Office 365?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay. I have for decade plus. I've used it since it wasn't Office 365, right? I used it when you would download it and install it from disks, things like that.
Oh my God. I mean, I remember back in the day doing that. But
that's how long I've used that suite. I never use Access though. never used Access, the database.
You've never used Microsoft Access?
I mean,
Ever?
I used it a little bit, but I just never had any reason to have to use it. I used Word, I used PowerPoint the most between the two, Word and PowerPoint, and then Excel fair amount, and that's it, really.
Yep.
I used to use Outlook, but I use Gmail now, so I don't use Outlook anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I turn things over to the venerable Paul Greenberg for the introduction of today's guest.
Okay, so before I give you his name, even though I kind of did do that already, I want to tell you something. I haven't known this gentleman for a long time. Known meaning had a lot of interaction with him. However, I've known of and seen this esteemed industry analyst for years, actually, and I've always been impressed. And what I've been impressed with is two things. One is he's a very insightful guy, right? Meaning when he would ask a question, let's say at an analyst summit, it would actually be, as opposed to, "Hi, I'm the alpha here." Opposed to that, it would be an intelligent question that was designed to get to the bottom of something, or designed to open up an area of discussion, something along those lines. And I was impressed that way. The other thing I've always been very impressed with, and this might surprise everybody, is his sense of humor. He's really funny, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he where I've seen that, I see that sometimes at the analyst summits, but if you actually follow a lot of his posts on LinkedIn, including, by the way, his LinkedIn biography, he's really got this ironic, which tells you he's aware of his surroundings and the world around him quite a bit. He's got this really ironic kind of edgy, sarcastic sense of humor. I'll give you an example. When I was looking over his LinkedIn bio a couple of days ago, I saw that in his experience, he has from January 23 to February 23, official candidate Speaker of the House. Right. And then he goes through, he said his official campaign, just to give you an idea, I won't read you the whole thing, but to give you an idea, he said, "My official campaign slogan for this speaker vote, it's me. Hi, I'm the speaker. It's me." That was it. And so that sense of humor is apparent in everything he does and says all the time, even if he's not always being funny. He's always got that kind of sharp, insightful edge. And he aptly named his company, because he's an industry analyst who founded a company called Amalgem Insights. And his insights are sharp. So why don't we bring on this lovely guy? His name is Hyoun Park.
And you missed one of the key things about him too, is he has great taste in music, because he's a Prince fan as well. All right, so
I'm just here for the compliments, really. That's all I came here for. I'm just word on.
That's why people come on. That's why people come on the show, man. It's like the only reason that I can think that anybody would come on this show is to have their introduction by the venerable Paul Greenberg.
I figure him out.
And I'm shocked. I didn't even know I could win Stump the Godfather. Like, I didn't know I was a contestant until
it's
until
Price
afterwards.
is Right. We
So,
do Price is Right rules. That's the way we work. Look. Why don't we call it
$1?
We can we call it? What do you have a nickname that you're called frequently?
Gosh, not yet. Nothing stuck.
I'm just trying to figure out if we can do a new segment called Stump the and your nickname, and to get me out of this one.
Nah, it's too late.
I'm just working
You're in,
on
buddy.
it. I'm working on it.
That seat is irreplaceable. Irreplaceable.
That's literally the most insulting thing anyone's ever said to me. Right? It can't be irreplaceable. I need out. I got to get out. So look, what I said wasn't like me trying to just be nice. I mean, that's actually all of it was true, right? That's what always impressed me is the level of your look. Obviously, we've been at the same analyst summits and conferences for years, really, and never really had a lot of opportunity to speak. But well, you know how it is. You always have an opportunity, but you're always off being pulled 400 directions, so
Yeah,
it doesn't really
they're
work.
always busy. Always,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but same time, when you would stand, you know, I think I could probably speak for Brent here. Both of us don't ask a whole lot of questions. We do once in a while at these events, just because most of the time it's somebody trying to prove how
You know what my
important they
question
are.
is?
But
My question is usually, are those slides going to be available to us?
that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's when I'll finally do something with this, right? But because a lot of people just trying to prove how important they are. But your questions were always like interesting and insightful questions, meaning there was a purpose. It, as I said, it either dug into or opened up something else that you were trying to get at, and they were always valuable, and it was noticeable the difference between your questions. So, I mean, go into a little bit of your history. I'd love to hear where you came from, and you know why you ended up an industry analyst. And I know you cover CIO, CFO, and C-suite kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
like
How that worked and why you went there.
honestly, I don't even know how I got into tech. When I graduated from college, I was a women's and gender studies major. So all of the kerfuffle around, everything from critical race theory to, transgender this to, all of that. Like I just studied all of that in late 90s in college. And frankly, a lot of it was dull, like very legalistic, very academic, all the stuff that I never thought could possibly become actual news. And then here we are in 2024, where all of these are like third rail, lightning bolt topics, if you even say them, So, I just find that wild that, what I majored in turned into something so controversial because I never thought that women in culture was controversial. They're around, have been around a long time, will be around after men die out, I'm sure. Like like that's how this works. But so I was looking for a job after college. First job after college was in customer service. I ended up accidentally becoming a Kana CRM admin back in the day.
Wow.
And I learned that there's this whole thing called enterprise software that I had never learned anything about. And being above average intelligence, I was really interested in all the systems that I used, all the GUIs, all the web-based applications, on all the data associated with my job. And over time, I got Peter principled up. I kept failing upwards into increasingly technical positions. And then before you know it, I'm a database administrator 5 years out of college. I wish I had taken data structures or something like that in college. It probably would have helped with understanding databases more quickly instead of having to read the manual faster than I got to every problem that I ran into. But so, Paul, you were talking about not working with Access. Like Access got me into the database world. If it hadn't been for Access, I probably wouldn't have made it in tech because I would have had to work with something way more complicated on the database side. So I get into tech, and about 10 years in, I've pretty much figured out, okay, here's how these systems work. Here's how you manage millions of dollars in IT. I start reading some of the, the industry analyst research at the time. And I think, in my area, the stuff that I do well around IT cost, IT budget, IT finance, billing systems, I think I can do a better job than this. And so I decided, about 10 years in, I couldn't see myself becoming a CIO, which was kind of the career path, just because all the internal politics you deal with there are just not what I'm great at. So I was like, where else can I go as a next step to actually be smart and look at the market at large and help people with problems? And this industry analyst thing really seemed to fit the bill. So I get into being an industry analyst. In a couple of years, I build this, I get on social media early, just at the right time. I'm covering IT costs during the 2008-9 recession. And I build basically like this 700K practice in 2 years. And I think, wow, this is so easy. This is, why doesn't everybody do this job? And then, reality hits. And then, the next couple of years, struggled a little bit more, and I started figuring out kind of like the breadth of this job, which has just been such an interesting career challenge that has taken up really, all of my career ever since, like the last 15 years of my life.
Wow. So why did you? When you started, did you start by joining an existing analyst firm, or did you just do it on your own from the beginning? When you
I was
began?
with the Aberdeen Group for a few years. That's
Were you
where I
the
got
other
my
one
start. That's really yeah.
That was in early 2000s, you said?
Late 2000s.
Late.
Yes. After they had been bought by Hart Hanks, and they were
Yeah.
a subsidiary of a public company, which actually helped me because at that point I had done IT at large organizations for a few years. So going into another analyst firm that was part of a large company actually felt more natural, because like I knew what we had to do every quarter. We had to recognize that revenue. We had to make sure that everything we did fit into the SEC rules, just stuff like that.
So if you're shooting the breeze with a CIO right now, what are you telling them?
Oh gosh, I hate to say it, but every question starts with AI and what is this generative AI thing going on, and honestly, every single time I tell them, you've got two things that you need to worry about, and it just gets down to data quality and your ability to manage the model or manage the logic, data and logic. It really comes down to those two things, and then making sure that those two strategies fit into your overall business strategy. Like, I feel like I could just put that on repeat and just make that the elevator pitch for every IT executive I'm speaking to right now, because that's my specific world, and what I look at. But it's so frustrating because everybody wants to dig straight into this like conversational stuff, or how does Gen AI lead to like artificial general intelligence, and all these other buzzwords that I think they read once in the Wall Street Journal and then now assume is like a goal of theirs. And I have an MBA. I understand how important buzzwords are, but at the same time, I feel like, come on, let's get back to reality here for a second. Like, we are so far away from this, the idea of actual general AI, and we don't have rules for general AI. We don't know how brains work really anyways. We don't know so much about intelligence to start with. So let's get back to the basics and talk about how we avoided trying to clean up our data for the past 10 years because we're so enamored with the idea of big data, i.e., dump it all into, the swamp and hope that it cleans itself up at some point. Now we actually have to clean that up if we want to move forward. So, that's a lot of what I end up working on.
So CFOs are actually, they're anxious to get into the Gen AI stuff.
No, they're not anxious to. They just got dragged into it, just like they got dragged into SaaS, and they got dragged into supporting all these iPhones in the IT world and mobile apps. They don't want to change anything. The CFO would be happy to work on the same mainframe they worked on 30 years ago and have, stick to every single, foundational platform app they have and never invest in anything ever again. But, they always get pulled in kicking and screaming into all this.
So who are company, or what are which companies? There we go. Got to get my grammar right. Which companies do you think are doing it right at the moment? Like, really, when you're looking at their paradigmatic kind of examples of the way you really should go about this, given whatever specific, customer stuff you have to do. But name a company or two that you think are really doing this right?
Yeah. So I'm not talking about from a business practice perspective, but from like a technology perspective. I really love what Uber has done. I think they've just done a fantastic job of trying to balance the speed of business with the outputs that they have, and creating AI that actually makes sense for what they do as a company. They know that it's all about managing millions of cars, millions of whatever they're calling their employees that are not employees. Be that, whatever you want to call that. It's an incredible amount of streaming data that has to be analyzed in real time to make the business work. And their business works at the end of the day. I think it's a fantastic example of where they are not getting caught up with necessarily the hype around what is the latest and greatest and newest. They are focusing on the capabilities that really matter from a data process and output perspective.
So
I think about them a lot. I think a lot about like the contact center space, and where they're honestly struggling a lot to figure out how AI fits in. And I think part of it is because it's very tempting to think that generative AI works for speaking directly to end users and getting rid of tons of agents. But like, that's not the reality. Like, Gen AI just isn't smart enough to really go there, other than for very superficial things right now. So and it catches up pretty quickly. So I think there's a lot of experimentation going on right there that is going to have to be figured out.
Verint is a company. They're in that contact center. What do they call them? They call themselves something open OCAS or UCAS or
no CCAS.
CCAS or
CCAS.
Contact Center as a Service. Yeah. But now they're talking about open CCAS because it's
right.
Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at their analyst event at the end of last year, they started talking about kind of taking the Uber model into the contact center from a standpoint of, like when we get to the airport, first thing we do is pull out Uber, schedule a ride. We don't know who's going to get us. Honestly, I don't really care, as long because it seems like everybody I've gotten is good. And so the person who picks us up, they're making up their own hours. They're, getting an opportunity to work when they want, how long they want, and, take time off when they want. So they're trying to leverage what this Uber model, bring it into like this contact center so that the contact center agents can almost be kind of work the way Uber drivers do. Are you seeing any of those kind of other examples of companies trying to look at what Uber is doing to bring that in and somehow, a little bit of a transformation between, the way their workers have worked and possibly using this technology and these business models to allow them to work more along the lines of an Uber driver, the way that they're able to be more, have more control over their work, but still get the work done?
I think the funky thing that's happening is really around real-time data. Like, people use the term real-time data in a bunch of different ways, and I think it leads to a lot of mistakes in investments. Like something like a Verint or other contact center vendors. Honestly, the data that they're dealing with tends to be around cases and customer interactions that happened on a historical basis. They are not what happened 10 seconds ago, or necessarily deal with what the customer has been doing in the last 2 minutes that needs to be immediately processed. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it isn't. And I think because of that, there can be a lot of confusion on what is necessary for real-time analysis. Is it really about analyzing in real time a bunch of historical data, or do you really need to know what just happened in the past minute or so to support customer service? And those are two very different things from a data perspective. So I think that's a real challenge that is going on right now. And I feel like when I'm looking at the contact center space, or really the field service or other service areas, the investments that companies are making sometimes don't fit the actual use cases that most of their customers are coming in with. And I feel that confusion is happening a lot right now between the big data stuff and the AI stuff.
Interestingly enough, on the model you were describing, I was talking to somebody the other day who works for FEMA, and
Mhm.
pretty much he's older, and he told me about this a network that FEMA has. It's actual, people employed by FEMA, but they're mostly retirees, and they're decentralized across the entire country, so that they're regionally located in multiple regions. And of course, with FEMA, obviously, real-time data is super important because it's emergency management and first response. So, and yet also historical data, like, okay, there's a levee over here and it's been there for 10 years. Things like that are also equally as important. This network of people, they work from home. There's an office, but you go in maybe once a week. Typically, you have a Zoom call on a Friday of your immediate, co-workers, quote unquote, for the area, and your job is to monitor all this data over the country, right? But it's pretty much you're setting your own time and hour. You got to get certain things done, and it's retirees and it's decent. I mean, pretty much that model adapted or adopted for a very different use case, one that I was completely unaware of, actually. But I found it really fascinating to think of how, I mean, I hate to give too much credit to the government ever, but how smart that model actually is. I mean, it's incredibly smart because this is a lot of retired, executives and others. They're not all retired, but most of them were. So it kind of goes to your point too. The one thing there is what the actual labor cost is not very much. It's so it's fascinating to see these things being put into action in places you would never expect.
Wow, I'm surprised it actually works that well. And I kind of feel the same about government. I spent some time in my 20s and 30s as a treasurer for a city councilor, so in Boston. And what I tended to find felt like the people I worked with were very smart and wanted to do the right thing, but they usually had bad systems and they had to go through 6 layers of paperwork to get anything done.
Yeah.
So it was very frustrating for them because they actually knew their jobs extremely well. Like skill wise, the people working in government, I feel, are as good as their jobs or better than people in the private sector. It's they make trade-offs based on how much they want to make versus the job security you get in the government, things like that. But then,
and there's a level of and the political aspects of that, there's a level of idealism too that works.
Yeah, every 4 years, your job is going to change a lot, no matter what. Yeah.
Hey, I want to go on a little bit of a different tangent because I know you go to a lot of events, and that's traditionally that's when we see it's like, oh, okay, is that conference is that time of year again? Okay, hey, there he is.
Yes, the gathering.
The gathering. So we're about to end the first quarter of 2024, and I think I've been to more conferences this year in the first quarter of a year than even pre-pandemic, and it just got me to thinking that it feels like these conferences are not getting better. I mean, it feels like they're almost like, oh, great, we're able to go back to what we were doing in 2019 as opposed to, wow, all the things we learned in the COVID years, now we can do this. Give me your impression so far of the event season for you so far. Has it met expectations? Are there things that you like? Are there things that you wish they do differently? I mean, I'm just really curious about this.
Brent, I think you nailed it. I love meeting people face to face, and the events are really good for doing that. And everybody's missed it, so everybody loves talking to each other. That part works out really well. But in the COVID, breakdown, shutdown, we all learned that you can also stream events and stream remote Q&A, do things like that in ways that are useful. Remote is not great for networking, but it is really good for sharing information in real time. And I feel like a lot of that got lost. And then I also feel like a lot of institutional knowledge got lost at each organization on how to do events. Like when you look at the events team at each software company, compare them to 5 years ago, usually it's a very different team. And it's not the new team's fault, but they have lost a lot of information about how these events used to be run and like what people were looking for, and are still kind of, I feel like, getting their sea legs on how to do that right. Hopefully that's just a matter of experience. In the next couple of years, that will kind of shake out. But I do feel like that has been kind of an issue as well, that there was a lot of turnover in that space, in those specific roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, unfortunately, a lot of the institutional knowledge got lost because people who had been there for years and paid a lot, right? So, and then that insane, because the layoffs in the last several years have all been around, basically payroll. They have very little to do with the quality of the work, right?
Yes.
So it's, and to me, that's cut off your nose to spite your face thinking, I'm sure, and you would know this better than me. Are there any CFOs who you talk to who see that as cut off your nose to spite your face, or I say, nah, that's just what we do? Who's a CFO that you could literally name who sees the better picture, the picture that, let's say, ensures longevity for the company, not short-term shareholder results?
Alan Weiselberg.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. So who would be one that you could name?
Right. Like, other than Apple, who else is taking a long-term view right now? Almost everybody else sees that if you lay off people, investors will reward you for it. And even the likes of Salesforce, who has traditionally been a very, I would say, civically forward company, has had to deal with that with activist investors and the like. And at the end of the day, they had to do something to keep their stock price up and keep investors from, doing the whole, Raiders thing.
I guess, we all love Zoho, obviously. And but their model is, it's funny. You can't reproduce their model. You can learn from Zoho, but it's like you learn specific things from Zoho. You can't actually, who could name a company that could literally say, I want to reproduce Zoho's model? I don't think, Alan Berkson, who's formerly from Freshworks and ran AR, is becoming an analyst and advisor to companies now. Alan actually said to me at one point, look, Zoho is unicorn model. He said it's literally not reproducible. So how much can you learn from that model? But then the thing I think we all know is there are lessons to be learned specifically from practices that they have, as opposed to the model itself. But they may be the only model I know that really does take that long-term into account that way, right? The way we're talking about, and maybe to your point, Apple, but even Apple, it's hard to tell. They just keep, they on the other side of that model, they just keep raising prices. Right. So,
right.
The consumers end up taking the brunt of it rather than what do you call it? Streamlining and cutting. They just bulk up prices.
But also, so much of tech is based on stock prices, the compensation, what you can borrow off of to do X, Y, Z. All that is based on a stock price that has to stay at a certain level. So I feel like most of the major public tech companies get caught up in that.
Yep, absolutely.
ServiceNow maybe being another example of one that is more long-term facing, but there are not many of them, honestly.
And ServiceNow actually in its own way shows the value of the model by the rate of growth that they've had over 5 years, from 1 to at least a run rate of about 10 billion. Right. I mean, or 9 billion, whatever it is, but it's astounding growth.
Hey,
yes.
We're at the top of the hour, but I did just one quick question before we get to the last question. But you get a chance to talk to these CFO kind of folks. What impressions are they giving you in terms of how they feel the economy is at this particular moment?
it's weird because the actual economic numbers, frankly, are not bad. But there's been this weird shadow that has been hanging over the CFO office from a macroeconomic standpoint for the last couple of years. The feeling that something is about to go horribly wrong. And it is really hard to get rid of that specter right now. I don't think there's a way to fix it. Even though when you look at the numbers from a pure metrics perspective, other than the bad inflation that we had, about a year and a half ago, that has honestly been mostly fixed. We are where we are. The one big thing is the ridiculous U.S. debt we have, which is a whole nother hour, whole nother show.
Yep.
But be that as it may, it's not an issue that is about to go away, and it is something that is relatively predictable in terms of the global economy. So, yeah, I feel like people are preparing for a storm and have been preparing for the past 2 years. The storm never comes, but the caution remains.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. You're right. It's like this big dark cloud has been hanging over us for the better part of 2 years.
Mhm.
And all you see are these numbers that keep pointing in a completely different direction. But that ominous feeling is still
Yep.
still out there.
It's hurting the direction of the election too.
Oh, yeah.
So another discussion. So before we get to the final question, there's one piece of breaking news that I have to announce, and then one other question for you, Hyoun. So the breaking news is Bob Stutz is in, so you can take the question mark down.
All right. We are all set. That's going to be fun.
All right. Now, how do people, I know you and Charlie Arouse seem to do a show together. That's one way.
Yes.
But how do people get a hold of you other than attend analyst summits and industry events?
So usually just emailing me at Hyoun@amalgeminsights.com or talking to my director of client services, Lisa. I'm still on X, formerly Twitter for now, LinkedIn, Threads, YouTube, all of those social media things. Funny, when I started as an analyst 15 years ago, I just happened to be early to market on social media. So, I was popular there, for a time, and then realized, how hard it is to create this content. Obviously, you guys know doing it so much every week, but you have to really build it into your schedule to stay on top on the social media side. And I never realized that was going to be such a big part of the job. I thought it was going to be like, just looking at the data and helping people with tech problems, but no. But be that as it may, I would say the email, the social media stuff, I track all of it, and I'm always happy to interact.
Thank you, sir. All right, Brent. Take it away.
All right. And we've known you for a number of years, and I have no idea what your response is going to be to this next question. We've had this great. We've had a really great conversation. We really enjoyed it thoroughly. But depending on how you answer this last question, we may never speak to you again. So no pressure or anything, but just,
let's go.
Thought we throw this out here. So, do you have a favorite NFL team?
I am reluctantly going to say the San Francisco 49ers.
That's what I thought.
I actually live in the Oakland area, but as you know, professional teams don't seem to like us very much right now as they keep leaving one by one. First the Traders, then the Warriors moving across the bay. Now the A is about to head off to Las Vegas. Very frustrating to watch. I lived in Boston for 19 years. I never was able to get into the Patriots.
All right. Okay. All right,
That was
we'll-
literally the only wrong answer.
We'll
The
just
only
stop right.
possible wrong answer would have been yes. My favorite team is the New England Patriots.
You had me scared when you said, I lived in Boston, but you came back to us when you said, but I never could get into the Patriots. So we're good.
I mean, the thing is, I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. We have go Vols, go Tennessee, go UT, the real UT, real orange.
Are you
Our
a Rocky
stadium
Top
is
guy?
like twice the size of New England Stadium, so I could never get into the Patriots.
Wait a minute. Did you go to University of Tennessee?
I didn't, but I did
No,
grow
you-
up there.
You
Okay.
were Little Ivy League, right?
Yeah, I went
Yeah.
to a little school called Amherst. Yeah.
Amherst
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
Wellesley and
But
Yep.
you came back home and sang Rocky Top whenever you. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
So you're safe. We would love to have you back.
yes. Stand on it.
You passed, and we're glad. And by the way, there it is, folks. No question mark any longer. We got the foursome in. It's going to be a great debate next week. All right. This has been awesome, man. When are your some of the next events that you're going to? Maybe we'll cross paths.
Gosh, I'm going to a lot of data and AI-ish stuff coming up. So
What a shocker! Really?
this is just
Really?
yeah. So a lot of Dell Boomi, Databricks, Snowflake, all the usual suspects trying to manage data. Informatica, IBM. It's going to be that time of year for me.
Okay. Well, we won't see you
We
on
won't
any
be
of those.
seeing you at any. I'm trying to retire and not go to events anyway. So
Maybe we'll
unless
see
I
you
go
at
to the event.
Dreamforce.
Yes,
we'll see you before
absolutely.
that.
Dreamforce, Dreamforce,
We'll see you before
Tableau,
that.
all that good stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, it's been a pleasure having you. Definitely look forward to having you again. And on behalf of Hyoun, I am Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and we will see you next week.
However, you need to show.
Oh, how could I do that? Because
Yeah.
I literally saw Anne.
You'll
last
see
week.
what. There we go.
Literally saw Anne last week. And actually, I asked Anne, isn't there a way that you can get Minnie a pass to come into this? She's like, well, we tried to get her get a badge as a what do they call those help dogs?
Yeah, a service dog.
The service dog, but they weren't going for it. So
No, Minnie does not. Minnie's the one who needs a service dog.
anyway, we will see you next week.